So this is the dark and disturbing downfall of Howard Stern.
Howard Stern dominated radio for over 40 years, earning nearly $1 billion while developing a reputation as the biggest shock jock of all time. But the term shock jock is simply not strong enough to describe the absolutely atrocious, wicked, and downright degenerate behavior he has
exhibited. Is it really downfall if he has like over 1 billion?
On his show, from blatant racism to suggestive language about minors to public humiliation and even toying with deceased human
black past.
There is nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, that Howard won't joke about. If you think there is a moral line that can't be crossed, Howard has skipped 100 yards past it. But recently we have learned that Howard is not proud of his legacy. He is disgusted by it. The changed man has reflected on his problematic past in therapy, and today sees himself as a progressive beacon of moral righteousness. Howard doesn't want you to look into his past because you might find out that his words and actions were always used to protect his giant mountain of gold. So today we are going to dive deep into the twisted world of Howard Stern, the most controversial man in entertainment history. The King Schmaltz Bagel Hour was the name of Howard Stern's weekly comedy show on Boston University's radio station WTBU. However, the show was canceled during its very first broadcast due to a racial sketch titled Godzilla Goes to Harlem. It's clear from the very beginning that Howard had an affinity for controversial humor and was eager to share it on air. Radio was his dream job, and the Mount Everest peak of radio was in New York City, so a job there became his ultimate goal. After college, Stern bounced around radio stations all over the East Coast, but eventually landed a stable job in 1981 in Washington, D.C., hosting radio at WWDC. Stern knew this job was a big enough resume booster to eventually land him in New York. He knew he needed to be rambunctious to dominate his competition, but he couldn't do it alone. Building a team was very important. He connected with his co-host Robin Quivers. Stern's team loved Robin's laugh and thought she would be a perfect fit for Howard to riff with. She could serve as an effective counterweight to Howard's often racially charged antics. Management liked the idea of pairing the controversial Jewish guy from New York with the black woman from nearby Baltimore. With his dream team assembled, Stern was feeling cocky, and he let his listeners know immediately that he was not your typical radio host. In his very first broadcast at WWDC, he called the office of Mayor Marion Barry and yelled at the assistant who answered the phone to explain what kind of man calls himself Marion. "That's a girl's name," Howard insisted. On the second day, he rang a local high school and proposed that students be given the day off to celebrate his arrival. His on-air stunts forced the station to install a 7-second delay to contain his spontaneous and irreverent outbursts, just in case they needed to silence his audio. And it took him less than 1 year to get into some controversy. In 1982, an Air Florida jet crashed into the Potomac River, killing 78 people. The very next morning, Howard Stern called the airline and inquired about the price of a one-way ticket from National Airport to the 14th Street Bridge. His unpredictable behavior quickly made Stern one of the top-rated personalities in Washington radio.
Man, when I get to your age, I hope they shoot me. Why am I different from other DJs? Because I fart on the air. What? I fart on the radio.
Howard joked on everything and everyone equally. No race or religion was singled out. Some people loved it and others hated it.
I
guess. Look at this, I just want to say something. A black woman and a white man shaking hands in Washington. Who says there's racial problems, man? Who says there's racial? Get your hand off me! You catch some kind of disease? Come on over here. You're a young person, are you? Or are you a person?
Good one,
Any young person?
I'm a young person.
You are a young person? You know who I am?
No.
You ever listen to my show, Howard Stern Show?
Yes.
You do? You like it?
Not particularly.
No, what don't you like about it?
You're rather crude.
I'm rather crude?
Yes.
Oh, how do you mean? Give me an example.
You're rather disgusting, and I don't care to give you an example.
Actual hater. Nice.
Even though Howard was a liability at times, WWDC was impressed with the jump in ratings and offered him an extension in his contract. But Stern's dream was to work in the New York City radio scene. WNBC in New York offered him a 5-year, $1 million deal, so he followed his heart.
We're all just getting to know one another. It's beautiful. This is WNBC. It is 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. NBC figured that they put me on in the afternoon, increase their ratings, and save AM radio. So we're going to sit here all day, wait for the phones to ring. We have a lot of celebrities who are going to call in. It's going to be exciting, Neil, and this should be quite a momentous occasion.
Stern was now in his home city, working his dream job, and with that momentum, he boosted NBC's ratings with ease. But the prim and proper network tried to control Stern and minimize his controversial content. Howard was always quick to make fun of the network he was employed by, which obviously bothered them.
There's just one bathroom at NBC. It's down the hall from my office. Every drug user in the building uses because it's the only private bathroom. So now they broke the lock on the door so people can't lock it.
I know.
So that the NBC security people go in and bust drug abusers.
It was this 3-year stretch where Howard
he's finally saying the truth, so
was approaching A-list fame. His frequent appearances on Late Night with David Letterman increased his visibility nationwide.
I'm kind of strange on the radio, and I'm not a good disc jockey. I don't play records, that kind of thing.
Well, now, why is that? Why don't you play the records?
Because I basically hate the music that NBC plays. The station was in the toilet bowl before I got there, and if I continued to play the music that they played, it would have been probably dead last in the ratings.
Although fans loved him making fun of his own network, he knew it was reaching a tipping point.
I am probably on a roll right now that will get me fired within a year or so. I will probably be fired, but I'm willing to accept that.
Despite this being his dream job, Howard was basically asking to be fired, and he would get exactly what he wanted. But first, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Underdog is the easiest way to play fantasy sports. $100 deposit in Canada. All you have to do for a first deposit.
WNBC issued the following press release this afternoon. As of today, Monday, September 30th, WNBC has canceled the Howard Stern program because of conceptual differences that exist between Howard Stern and WNBC management.
It isn't exactly clear why Howard got fired,
so you can have opposing views,
since the ratings for his show were through the roof. Some people think it's because of an on-air sketch that he did about bestiality, but it could have just been some uptight executive at NBC that felt Howard was ruining the network's image.
Tell you the truth, right now I am looking for a job. I would love to hear from everyone. My agent is Don Buckwell. Please give me a job.
I want to get back on the air in New York.
Stern's numbers spoke for themselves.
Jobless.
He quickly got another job at WXRK in New York and dominated for years. His appearance on The Tonight Show in July of 1992, where he looked like nothing short of an 80s rock star, was crucial to his nationwide visibility. When Howard is on your show, he takes control and dominates the conversation. On the show, he announced his very first feature film.
I'm excited
In every rock star, hairstyle level.
announce that I have signed with New Line Cinema.
What's the name of the movie? What's it about?
Well, it's called The Adventures of Fartman.
And 2 months after this interview, Fartman would descend from the heavens above as he made his official debut at the MTV Music Video Awards.
Allow me to demonstrate the greatest farting powers of all.
Good one.
Howard was officially an American sensation by the end of 1992. His show was the #1 radio show in Los Angeles and New York City simultaneously. He held a 6.4% share of the LA market while holding 9.4% in New York. From there, his show was broadcasted in Philly, Washington, Baltimore, Dallas, and Cleveland. The more famous he got, the more his controversial jokes became huge news stories. But it did not stop him. It actually made him want to be more unhinged than ever. In 1992, Stern was slapped with a $600,000 fine by the FCC after he said on air, "The closest I came to making love to a black woman was when I pleasured myself to a picture of Aunt Jemima on a pancake
Okay, he can differentiate. Come on now.
box. I did it right on her kerchief." But this statement is mild compared to how bad his 1993 blackface stunt was. In a 1993 New Year's
Oh,
Eve
hell
pay-per-view
no.
event, Stern and Sherman Hemsley did a parody skit acting as Ted Danson and Whoopi Goldberg. Stern painted his face black with white around his mouth to mimic the hateful representation of black people in show business in the early 1900s. But it wasn't just the paint. He dropped just about every single racial slur used against black people, as well as speaking in a stereotypical
And even N-word.
accent used to demonize African Americans.
Well, don't let the door hit you on your big black ass, mama, on the way out of here. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. Now, Whoopi, you is a filthy
But this wasn't even the first time he had done blackface. A decade earlier,
He
on the
actually said it.
Petey Green show, he showed up with a painted face and a headpiece that was supposed to make fun of an afro.
Black people want slavery as much as white people want. The slaves we want
Well, I thought it was just a Hamlet for Soviet
is the
Union.
Indo-Chinese.
And if you can believe it, he did it one more time on his short-lived Channel 9 TV show in 1991.
Now, I'm just trying to improve my image. The black people are against me because they say that I'm not a real black man.
How he got away with this was very simple. As long as the corporations that were broadcasting him were making money, they didn't really care about morality. But make no mistake, there was definitely
I mean,
outrage
it was earlier time, so
against Stern at the time. Many people
I
calling
don't think you can do that nowadays.
for him to be canceled, banned from radio and television. The federal government was fining him constantly. Nearly every year, the FCC fined him tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars for some obscene thing he said or did. But he just paid the fines, told them to go F themselves, and kept up his bad behavior. His fans
Paid off by the money, nice.
loved that nothing could stop him. He released his 1993 autobiography, Private Parts, which caused riots of thousands of fans during book signing events. He held an anti-censorship rally to protest the FCC's constant attacks on his show, to which 5,000 people showed up outside the United Nations. He couldn't stop dominating. He was featured on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. Billboard added a category to their annual awards basically just for him. The nationally syndicated Air Personality of the Year award was given to Howard every year from 1994 to 2002. The Miss Howard Stern New Year's Eve pageant in 1994 broke the record for the most paid subscribers for a non-sports event.
You could make $50,000 just for appearing on my New Year's Eve pay-per-view special. Listen up. Are you beautiful? Are you talented? Is your life so meaningless that you could drop everything and come to New York at a moment's notice? Then I want you. Yes, I want you to enter your local Howard Stern beauty pageant. You could be a finalist in my New Year's Disgusting Eve pay-per-view special. And don't be discouraged because
Oh, they're actually touching.
here's last year's winner.
400,000 households paid $40 each to tune in, for a pay-per-view gross of $16 million. Howard Stern was the king of all media. No matter what platform, what medium, he and his filthy fans were going to dominate. He got so confident, he decided to run for governor of New York. He secured the required 2/3 majority votes, receiving 287 of the 381 votes cast, but had to drop out of the race because he wouldn't complete a financial disclosure form required by the Ethics in Government Act. He said, "I've been telling you about myself since the first day I started broadcasting. There's only one fact I never revealed. I never told you how much money I made. I never told you how much money I have in the bank. And the reason I never told you is because it's none of your business. Out of all the horrible things that Howard has said and done, it's interesting that where he draws the line is telling you how much money he makes. And Howard had no intentions of toning it down, but his show was starting to get dark. Deborah Debbie Tay was a frequent guest on the Howard Stern show, but fans of the show called her the space lesbian because she would tell stories on the air about her being abducted by aliens and having sex with the female aliens. Miss Tay was showing signs of suffering from mental illness, and her frequent drug use added more stress to her condition. Sadly, in April of 1995, Debbie's boyfriend Chauncey Hayden called the show to tell Howard that Miss Tay passed away from a heroin overdose. Howard then invited Chauncey to the show the next day for an In Loving Memory episode for Debbie. Chauncey brought Miss Tay's cremated ashes in a box to the studio. While Stern did dedicate the show to her memory, he also made some rude comments and remarks, suggesting he would glue her back together, and then asking Chauncey to chew pieces of the bone fragments. Howard then requested the box
Okay, now that's disgusting too far.
ashes and let the audience know they would be opening Debbie later on.
I figured I'd want to see her, so without further ado, maybe open the box and let me take a look at Debbie, her final resting place. So that's Debbie, huh?
You're doing weird things.
Wait, Debbie wants to say something.
Even for the 90s, picking up and shaking human bones was
Okay, that's kind of
pretty
gruesome.
grim. You could tell the crew was mortified.
Dude, I don't know, man. This is really wrong.
You think so?
Yeah.
What
Debbie would
do you
love
mean it's
this.
wrong?
Debbie would love this. You know it.
What do you mean it's wrong?
This is heavy
That's
metal,
Debbie.
dude.
Look at that. Ow, ow.
Let me see. I gotta come over and see Debbie for me.
I thought I was ready.
You want to come over and visit?
My knees are getting weak again.
Oh, man.
There's a lot of
Now,
her.
this is a solemn moment.
What do you think this is of her? You think it's her head?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Howard then proceeded to pick up and inspect every piece of bone while speculating what part of her body it was. While all of this unfolded, Debbie's brother and sister Jeff and Melissa listened in horror as their late sister's remains were being played with, live on air. This situation prompted the siblings to file an $8 million lawsuit against Howard Stern and Infinity Broadcasting. Initially, the family's lawsuit was dismissed by lower court, but an appellate court reinstated the complaint in 1998, suggesting that a jury could find Stern had gone beyond the bounds of decent behavior. After extensive legal battles, Tay's family was prepared to settle for approximately $60,000, while Stern's lawyers had initially offered around $30,000. Although lawyers for both
Only
sides
30k,
declined to
come on.
comment, the terms of the settlement remained confidential. A court source revealed that lawyers for Tay's family were smiling as they left the courthouse. It's clear why many people believe that Howard took this way too far, but defenders blame Chauncey for bringing in the remains and allowing Howard to get his hands on them. Regardless, the entire
Yeah, both of them are wrong.
situation should have never happened, because in Howard's style of comedy, not even deceased people were safe from jokes, especially not the beloved, iconic 23-year-old Mexican-American singer Selena, who was tragically shot and killed by a crazy fan in Texas in 1995. The next morning, Howard proceeded to play her music with gunshot sounds in the background, then repeating over and over how much he hated the music while mocking Hispanic people.
Spanish people have the worst taste of music. They really do. They don't like dance. No, they don't like any dance.
Alright,
It's all like, let's dance and pretend that every human being in our
this is Salaman again.
country isn't corrupt.
Keep in mind, Stern's show was broadcasted in Texas at the time, where Selena was slain. Outrage erupted, with Hispanic leaders in Texas threatening to boycott radio stations that air Howard Stern, but he never apologized, because he stood firm in his belief towards racist humor.
You see, if you make ethnic groups, as long as you make fun of everybody and you have a good time with it, and they know you're not really, you can tell a racist from a guy who's having fun. But you know what? There are racists who listen to you. I mean, whoever wants to listen can listen and interpret it their own way. I just got to do my own thing. Then you have to talk about responsibility. I have no
And he doesn't care about everyone, huh?
responsibility. The only responsibility I have is to make people happy, have fun on the radio, and make them listen and laugh. That's my responsibility.
Many people believe that Howard is not a racist. He's just someone who loves dark humor. But even people who can understand the appeal of dark humor say that his jokes essentially normalize or justify this behavior. And actual racist people are indulging in his jokes because to them, they aren't jokes. And there is no doubt that Howard's subject matter attracts some of the most vile people in the world. Like in 1997 when a serial killer named Clay called into Stern's show.
Okay, Clay, so what happened? How many prostitutes have you killed?
12.
And you're wondering why you do it?
I have a pretty good idea.
Why?
I think I just do it for the sense of power.
Howard proceeded to have a 10-minute conversation where Clay admitted to how he slayed prostitutes in the New Orleans area. Clay answered every question precisely, with no hesitation. The FBI contacted Howard after the phone call for a copy of the conversation, but still to this day, we have no idea if it was a skit or not. This middle ground / gray area of not clarifying
Okay, that's a prank,
what is
bro.
a joke and what is serious played a huge part in Howard's popularity. Over the years, he was establishing a legacy group of reoccurring guests called the Whack Pack. These individuals had a signature trait, skill, disability, or unique personal appearance that made them essentially characters in the Howard Stern community. Some of the most popular
And the meme guy.
there were Beetlejuice,
Hey, my brother's my brother's back.
What do you got there, man?
Hey, my brother's brother.
What is it?
My dinner.
Breakfast of champions.
Breakfast and champion dinner.
You got a drink there?
Yes, my brother's brother.
Hank the Angry Drunken Dwarf,
So anyway, so you're pretty loaded. What have you been drinking all night?
I've been drinking a lot of booze.
Yeah? What are you drinking?
I drink everything.
Eric the Actor, Gary the Bigfoot, Daniel Carver, who was the former Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, Sour Shoes,
Bigfoot.
Nicole Bass, High Pitch Eric,
Hey, how are you?
And it's not a goof, that's his voice.
It's my real voice.
Yeah, and you've never gotten laid.
Never got laid before in my whole life.
Right.
Crackhead Bob, among dozens of other Whack Pack members. Fans believe Howard's content with the pack was his best work. They loved these people. Sure, they were laughing at them, but they were also laughing with them. And they all seemed to be having a good time. Howard was now a 20-year veteran in the industry, and it seemed like nothing could stop his momentum. Stern signed a deal with CBS to host the Howard Stern radio show on television. When he first launched, 79 stations carried the show, and they were rating 81% better when his show was on their station, but eventually the graphic content caused over 60% of the TV stations to stop airing the program over the next 3 years. It's not that he was any more controversial than before, we were simply in a changing world approaching the 2000s. And just before the turn of the century, Howard's comments on the Columbine High School shooting could be his biggest controversy of all time. The Columbine High School shooting occurred on April 20th, 1999 in Columbine, Colorado. Two students, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, carried out a mass shooting at their high school, killing 12 students and a teacher, and injuring many others. The two then removed themselves from the planet. The Columbine High School shooting nearly 30 years later still remains one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history, and in true Howard Stern fashion, the day after the shooting, he was talking about it on his show and had some very interesting things to say.
There was like really good-looking girls running out of there with their hands over their heads.
Yeah, I think the bomb team is still working.
If those kids try to have sex with any of the good-looking girls, they didn't even do that. At least if you're going to go south and kill all the kids, like, why wouldn't you have some sex?
Yeah, I would want some sex stuff.
Alright, that's stupid.
People take them out with some sex.
It's unclear if Howard's comments about the tragedy, or any other tragedy, are intentionally to cause controversy, or if it's his way of coping with the horrifying reality. The Denver Rocky Mountain News released a statement reacting to his comments. Either we are serious about showing respect for the dead,
It doesn't make sense. Coping, come on
their
now.
families, or we aren't. Either we care about the quality of our culture, or we don't. Let Howard Stern make his millions in other broadcast markets. He does not belong in Denver. Many people believe that there is a clear line to be crossed when coping with such atrocities. Making jokes, they believe, is crossing that line. It minimizes the damage done to the victims and their families. But comedy defenders believe that jokes and laughing is a way to prevent people from spiraling into a depression every time they turn on the news or open social media, since violence, murder, and all of the most heinous things that happen in our world are constantly being broadcasted to you. The radio channel rebroadcasting Stern's show in Denver was requested to drop it, and both houses in the state passed a measure to formally censor Stern for his remarks. Many advertisers cut ties with Howard over the comments.
I mean, there's something you should not joke about. I
Additionally,
mean,
his personal life was falling apart. Howard admits that his behavior was very difficult for his wife and 3 daughters to handle throughout his career. After 21 years of marriage, they mutually agreed a divorce was necessary. The now 45-year-old bachelor was on a warpath of sex and destruction. Now keep in mind that Howard's entire persona for 2 decades was the common suburban dad with a wife who stayed up late at night to talk about all of the raunchy things he wouldn't dare say at the dinner table. The majority of his fan base were probably men who would never admit to their wives they actually love Howard. Now he was just another multi-millionaire celebrity who was sleeping with different models every night. His image was ruined. His show was losing its creativity. Ratings were dropping exponentially, which led to some of the lowest moments in his career. In the year 2000, Howard seemed to start an obsession with the then 14-year-old Full House stars Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. While on his show, Howard started to share a story about having his 7-year-old daughter over to spend time with him. Looking for activities, Howard suggested a recently released Mary-Kate and Ashley movie for him and his daughter to watch together. He then goes on to make blatantly suggestive comments about the twins.
Remember the 2 little girls from Full House?
Sure.
Well, now they're like 13, and they're pieces of ass.
Oh, yeah, I've seen pictures of it.
And normally I don't look at a 13-year-old and sexualize them. I don't. But these 2 are pieces of ass. They've grown up perfect.
oh, I thought.
Yeah, their boobies are out. So, I mean, and don't get me wrong. I'm not into 13-year-olds.
Well, yes, you are.
But, I don't know.
I mean, is really describing
No, I'll tell you
them.
I don't look at them like, oh, gee, I want to have sex with them. But I look at them and I go, man, they're going to be great when they're adults.
At the time, Howard being around 45 years old making comments about teenage girls is very alarming. Again, even if he is joking, he is potentially justifying this type of mentality that some men his age might consider to be normal.
Pedo behavior.
And 2 years later, his thoughts on the 16-year-olds had not changed.
My 9-year-old is way into the Olsen twins. I mean, has everyone in their tapes, knows everything about them, loves them. But doesn't love them the way I love them. I love them because they're going to be hot.
The dark reality is that Howard's feelings towards the twins were unfortunately common. Celebrity birthday countdowns were a popular internet trend where people would anticipate a celebrity's 18th birthday to legally justify
Like the Barbie.
their creepy fantasies. Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen's 18th birthday was accompanied by no less than 7 websites dedicated to counting down the minutes until the twins officially reached adulthood. Making women feel uncomfortable almost comes natural to him. On a 2002 episode of The Howard Stern Show, Stern and his room of co-hosts started to discuss Anna Nicole Smith's weight gain in recent years. For some reason, she doesn't think she's heavy. I would say she weighs 300 pounds at least. A co-host then said, I bet you $100 she's not over 300, but it's got to be so close. I think she's got to be like 280, 290.
No, I'm a big woman, so what?
So I was guessing your weight. And I was going to say to you today, can you please get on the scale and then we'll have an over-under. That's all.
No.
Why not? Why not?
I'm not going to get on the scale. You gotta weigh me.
They proceeded to set up a game where they placed bets on how much Anna Nicole weighs. Once he got Anna on the show, he doubled down.
If we weigh you now, I'll give you $3,000 courtesy of i1.com and Trim Spa.
No.
Plus an Xbox for your son.
Nope, not enough.
Anna would not give in, so Howard kept pushing her. For the next 5 minutes, he kept harassing her. And if they got
Maybe like a million.
off the topic of her weight, he would just bring it back.
Do you want to go in the bathroom with Benji right now?
No, but I'm here for the weekend, and maybe we can go have dinner.
Oh my God.
You think dinner is for the 2 of you? Do you think maybe pass on the dinner and maybe go out and exercise? Seriously.
You're so pathetic.
Is that wrong?
Does that make you feel so much better about yourself?
Please let me weigh you. I'll give you $3,000
I
for
bet
your
you're
son.
feeling so good right now.
No, I'm not. I don't feel good until I
I mean, the money is not that. It's too low.
It's pretty clear this interview took place during a rough part of Anna's life, as she struggled with drugs and alcohol for many years. Despite this, she stood firm and refused to give Howard the satisfaction of breaking her down. Luckily for the fandom, Howard added a new consistent member to the show, Artie Lang, who was a stand-up comedian and huge fan of the show. Artie was a breath of fresh air for fans, as he represented the common man and average Joe persona that Howard lost. Artie was a self-admitted drug, alcohol, and food addict who also suffered from depression. His ability to make jokes and laugh away the pain made him connect with the millions of average men listening at home. Artie and Howard became good friends and exhibited great chemistry on set. They had another brief run of shocking content that the fandom loved, such as the Butterface pageant, which was was a beauty contest where women would put a brown paper bag over their face and only showcase their bodies. A panel of judges would rate them 1 out of 10 and then rate them again on their face once they removed the bag. The worse the face, the higher the score. So in theory, the ugliest woman would win. It's mind-blowing some of the women that they called ugly, especially when you consider how the judges looked or how some people in the crowd looked. This just seemed like straight up bullying. Also in the early 2000s, celebrities became more of a prominent part of Howard's program. He interviewed a wide variety of different stars: The Rock, 50 Cent, Tobey Maguire, Gene Simmons, Vince McMahon, Matthew McConaughey. And as the years went on, he became a go-to platform for celebrities to openly discuss some of their deepest secrets. Unfortunately for Howard, there was a major cultural change in 2004 after the Nipplegate Super Bowl halftime show controversy. Janet Jackson's breast was exposed in front of hundreds of millions of viewers, which sent the media into a frenzy due to outraged citizens. The FCC started censoring anything and everything they deemed indecent or unfit for mainstream media. 3 weeks after the Super Bowl, Howard's show was suspended for indecency after an interview with Rick Salomon. Rick was Paris Hilton's ex-boyfriend and the man involved in her infamous tape that was making the rounds on the internet. A listener called into the show and used the N-word with a hard R. By this point, this seems like nothing compared to the decades of disgust Howard has aired on his show. But this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Howard Stern was officially canceled. Well, not really. Double check and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Later in the year, Howard announced the signing of a 5-year,
Can you be truly cancelled?
$500 million deal with Sirius Satellite Radio.
Except by the YouTube, of
Radio is
course.
not mandated by the FCC, so his battles with the government are officially over. Granted, the viewership would decrease significantly since viewers have to pay a fee to access satellite radio, but Howard had secured a die-hard fan base during his career, and millions of those fans bought subscriptions to the radio just for him. This was a rebirth for Howard. He now has a wide open door to say and do whatever he wants with no repercussions, and as we know, Howard will take that to a level nobody could ever imagine. Allow me to introduce the It's Just Wrong show, easily the most abhorrent segment he has ever done. The It's Just Wrong show had just 4 episodes: father-daughter, brother-sister, mom-son, and mother-daughter. The real-life family members would have to answer trivia questions for a chance to win a cash prize of up to $10,000, but if they answer the question wrong, the male counterpart would have to take off a piece of their mother's, sister's, or daughter's clothing. The winner was the one whose partner is the last to get completely naked. Sometimes this was fathers undressing their adult daughters completely nude, or brothers undressing their little sisters nude in front of everyone in the studio and to the millions watching at home. If you think
Some people do it for money,
it can't get worse, it does. Near the end of the show, usually when everyone was naked, Howard and the crew would start throwing around money saying,
Valerie, as much as I'd love to hand you over the money, I mean, you wouldn't let your father spank you for $3 grand, would you?
For $3 grand?
Yeah. Naked over his lap? That would be really bizarre, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
that would be a little too much.
Or in one episode, he paid sisters to let their brothers get a handful of their breasts. Now, these were all consenting adults who knew the rules of the game and went into it knowing the rules of the game. Some of those creepy dads seemed to like the game a little too much. However, it just goes to show how desperate some people were to earn money, willing to humiliate themselves on camera for the entire world to see. Sadly for his fans, but possibly good for the rest of humanity, Howard Stern finally started to tone down his content. Many people believe around 2009 or 2010 his glory days were behind him.
Finally,
He was done with the overly raunchy and edgy skits. The Whack Pack would not make regular appearances, nor was he trying to introduce new characters for the fandom. His beloved co-host Artie Lang was struggling harder than ever, using hard drugs, going to rehab, relapsing, and starting all over every few months. His battle with depression almost ended everything in 2010. Although Howard wanted to support his friend, he didn't feel like letting him back on the show would aid in his recovery. Fans believe once Artie left, the show wasn't worth watching anymore. And this was sort of confirmed in a 2013 staff meeting that was leaked online, where fans came to the conclusion that Howard was not even close to the crude-humored legend he used to be. In the meeting, he berated his staff for over an hour on all of the things that they were doing wrong. Howard did not want them coming up with funny content and skits like they used to. Instead, his entire focus and goal was to convince more A-list celebrities to come onto his show.
We've had people like Billy Corgan come in, their album goes into the top 10. We've had books that have gone into the top 10. We're pretty amazing. But nobody knows it. We're now on satellite radio.
这像以前的嘛狗片。
And now that we're in satellite radio, we're in sort of our own little protected bubble. But what's happening is people are forgetting that this is the best medium for any guest to be booked on. Whether they're in the field of books, whether they're in music. Look at what we do for guests. We have a news department that actually promotes them after they're in. We play their shows over multiple times.
Howard mentioned that his 23 million paid subscribers, these extremely loyal fans, should be used as a marketing tool for celebrities. He noted how celebrities' publicists beg to be on Oprah, Jimmy Kimmel, and competing interview shows. Howard wants his show to be the #1 destination for celebrities to do interviews, promote their work, or whatever business they're pursuing.
Finally get the artists up here, and they walk into the radio station, and we look like, some people around here look like zombies from Walking Dead. We look like a college radio station. We look like we have homeless people working here. And I gotta tell you something, it's off-putting and scary.
It's mind-bending to imagine Howard Stern being concerned about the way his employees dress when just a few years ago he was making fathers undress their daughters entirely nude for money. Guy spends 30 years unmercifully bashing people and then blames his staff when celebrities don't want to come on the show. Total fraud. Howard 20 years ago would have made fun of the guy he became today. He claims now that he is a reformed, changed man.
That interests me zero, being as dirty as I want to be.
In his book, he writes about regrets for some of his past behavior, saying he was self-absorbed and had a hard-ass pose that no longer works. He doesn't even want people to read his other books, including the 1993 bestseller-turned-blockbuster, Private Parts.
It just doesn't represent me anymore, so it's hard for me to go back and look at it. Those books, they could be hurtful, and they were a little too intense. At that point, my attitude was it was a scorched earth policy. I'm going to blow you out of the water. I'm going to be pure id, and bam,
let it all out. That was my approach.
Howard says that he learned through therapy that he was hurting all those years. He was a jester, someone desperate for attention and status. He says he doesn't love the man he was, but he loves the man he is now. In the late 2010s, he started his mission to break the stigma regarding men's mental health. It was only a matter of time before people started digging through the skeletons in his closet, especially after he tried to deny his previous use of the N-word.
John, you use the N-word a lot. You
No, I used the N-word.
Yeah, I did.
Wait a second. Hold on.
I did.
I'll
I
say
remember
that.
it.
Whoopi, hold on.
Wait.
No, we had a guy on from the Ku Klux Klan
Yes.
who very freely used the N-word,
Yeah.
and my belief was, hey, say it out in the open,
Yes.
and I didn't use the N-word. Let's be very clear.
During the pandemic, Donald Trump Jr.
No, really, dude.
tweeted an old blackface video of Howard Stern demanding him to be canceled. Howard responded with, "There's nothing new here. We all knew I was the craziest MFer on the radio." He continued, "I never did anything behind the scenes. I did it right in front of your face." Howard did not
Yeah,
apologize.
but why lie though? Come
But
on.
he doesn't feel good about his behavior. "I cringe when I look at myself 30 or 40 years ago, and that was 27 years ago. I go, I can't stand it. Am I a bad guy? I don't think so." Keep in mind that 27 years ago, Howard was 43 years old. After this controversy, Stern started championing the vaccine and demonizing anyone who didn't get it.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? Them, their freedom. I want my freedom to live.
Joe Rogan, the world-famous podcaster who has dethroned Howard as the voice of the common man, had the opposite opinion. Joe was skeptical about the vaccine, which led to him being accused of spreading misinformation. After Joe addressed the
Oh, here
backlash on
comes.
Instagram, Howard felt Joe's response wasn't good enough. Even the apology, he just should have said, "You know what? Listen, I'm a comedian, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. I have no medical background whatsoever to be telling people what to do with their health." Stern suggested Joe's apology to be, "I'm wrong, and go get the vaccine before you die." Howard Stern fans never could have imagined that he would be criticizing celebrities' apologies in the 2020s. Howard always represented anti-establishment, free speech, but not anymore. This has resulted in his fans calling him woke, which he says is a compliment.
If woke means I can't get behind Trump, which is what I think it means, or that I support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine, well, dude, call me woke as you want. I'm not for stupidity, but I am woke, motherfucker, and I love it.
And he has a point here, I
Too late to
guess.
change, some people say. Stern represented the vitality of male impulse, fully indulging in raw, racy humor and raunchy entertainment. I don't think many people blame his opposers for bringing up his past, but it's also important to question all of the corporations who profited from his show for all of those years before randomly deciding their morals did not align. Some people think Howard's mental health and self-reflection in therapy narrative is just a cop-out, a way for him to gain sympathy and lazily right his wrongs for decades of disgusting behavior. Some people think he is merely just a sellout, who will say and do anything to protect the hundreds of millions of dollars he has earned.
He's generally doing that way, I don't know.
But very few people look at him as this changed man who is now a beacon of honesty and moral good. One thing is for sure, though, there will never, ever be another
Okay.
Howard Stern.
Yeah, we're ending there.